Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's our by-election roundup for the week. It's going to be a quick video as far as the by-election results go because only 3 this week, so only 3 to get into. Before I get started, I just wanted to apologise to all my subscribers. Didn't get the chance to make the 2026 regional preview video this week. Unfortunately, I just frankly did not have the time. Wasn't able to get it out, so I do apologise for that. Plan is to get back on schedule next week. Tuesday is the day I'm trying to aim to get those videos out, so we look at Tuesday as the sort of target for that video to come out. So apologies for that. We'll get straight into his by-election, shall we? So, like I said, only 3 this week, so a quiet week. Next week, there's a handful more, so stay to the end to see what we're getting next week. So we'll start up in Hunstanton Ward, Kings Lynn and West Norfolk. And as expected, it was a Reform win off of a retiring independent. But I have to say, I thought Reform would win this far more convincingly. 29.2% of the vote wins it for Reform, which is a very, very low share of the vote to win on. We have seen a few of these in the last few weeks, parties winning on less than 30% of the vote. You can see just based off the coloured bar there how sort of split this ward was in terms of the voting patterns. The Liberal Democrats were in second place, very close behind on 25.6%. So only 46 votes in it, which is just under 4-point margin of victory for Reform. And like I say, I thought, and in all fairness, I don't know anything about the ward or the sort of idiosyncrasies of it. But in the general area, East Anglia, Norfolk, Reform are doing very well according to a lot of the polling. So I thought Reform would have a much more convincing victory over here. So look, at the end of the day, Reform win. That's the main thing. And I think it's probably me just overestimating Reform's chances and maybe underestimating the Liberal Democrats. I didn't really see the Liberal Democrats coming through quite so strongly over here. Main 2 parties, well, Conservatives again down a pretty hefty 23 points, 17.8% of the vote, so they finished in 3rd place behind the Independent, obviously a different Independent, and Labour down again another hefty 21 points to a very irrelevant 3.2% of the vote. That is really, really catastrophic for Labour, actually, down from what, about 25% of the vote previously to 3%. That is extraordinary, and it goes to show the level of trouble that the Labour Party are in. And obviously we just had the budget that came out earlier this week. Things probably not going to get much better for Labour anytime soon. So that's Kings Lynn up in Norfolk. Barnoldswick in Pendle next then. Liberal Democrat defending, and to be honest, an expected Liberal Democrat win. I know I did say at the end of the video last week on the preview that maybe Reform might challenge the Lib Dems up here. If we remember, we looked at the electoral division that Barnoldswick falls in for the Lancashire County Council elections, and we did see Liberal Democrats and Reform were neck and neck in that division. But of course, that, as I said at the time, that electoral division far bigger than this ward, and as you can see, clearly a Liberal Democrat stronghold here. They've increased their vote share very slightly by 1.5 points to just under 60% of the vote. So look, a very strong performance by the Liberal Democrats again. Reform in a very distant second place, 26.2% of the vote. And the main 2 parties again reduced down to pretty irrelevant numbers. The Tories down 11 points to 10%, and Labour again down 11 points to, once again, a very irrelevant 4% of the vote. So not too much to say there. A majority of 33 points for the Liberal Democrats. Very comfortable turnout. 26% of people turned out for this one, so slightly more in line with what we expect to see from these by-elections. I forgot to mention 33% up in Norfolk, which isn't bad. You know, again, that's above that 30% mark where we've seen some of these by-elections sort of hanging around recently, so not bad there. So lastly for this week already, then we're on to the last one already. Hetton Ward in Sunderland, and again, pretty much expected. Labour defending, Reform gain, and here it was a very strong performance by the Reform Party. They came straight in at 45.2% of the votes, up 34 points previous. This was last year. So you can see their Reform gaining 34 points from a year ago, or 18 months ago, probably. It was probably May. Labour then were defending. They down again a very hefty 24 points to 22.7% of the vote. And indeed, finishing in 3rd place. Couldn't even finish in 2nd in a seat they were defending. This is a theme that we've seen in the last few months. Both main parties, Conservatives and Labour, in areas formerly that were very strong, if not even heartland areas for both those parties. In these by-elections, they're now not even finishing in 2nd place. And I think that's why I think the issue for those 2 parties is far more existential than a lot of people are talking about, because they're not even able to come runner-up in wards and areas of the country where they've been winning for, in some cases, decades. They're actually being relegated to third, sometimes even fourth place. So the Independent here, even with a reduced vote share from the previous Independent, down 25 to 25.6% of the vote, they beat Labour into second place there. Turnout here was around the 30% mark, and a pretty strong 528 vote majority for Reform up there in Sunderland, which is just under a 20-point margin of victory for them. So that's it for this week. A good week for Reform, I suppose. They've won 2 out of the 3. The Liberal Democrats winning the other one, and really, really poor results for the main 2 parties again. You can see neither of them feature in any meaningful way in any of these races, frankly. What can I say? Like I said, I don't think it's going to get any better for the Labour Party, which we may talk about a little bit after we've looked at next week. And the Tories, well, look, I've been saying for a long time, I think they're finished. I don't think they get wiped out entirely, but I think they are finished as a serious force in British politics. But Kemi had a good performance in the Commons on Wednesday, in all fairness to her. So let's go and have a look at next week then, and preview next week's by-elections. Okay, then, so next week we're up to again a much healthier 6 by-elections to get our teeth into next week. And starting us off, we're up in Derbyshire for Derbyshire County Council, Long Eaton North Division. Reform defending again, so they've had another person had to withdraw, having been elected in May this year. Now, they won in May with 35.8% of the vote. Looks like they came ahead of Labour, perhaps, 24.5%. So Labour in second, 24.5%. So Reform there with a little bit over a 10% margin of victory. Look, it'll be interesting. It's been a mixed bag for Reform in terms of defending these divisions that they won. Not the greatest margin of victory there, 10 points to defend. But seeing as Labour came in second, you may well back Reform to defend this. Maybe the Tories, we have seen the Tories come up and beat Reform in a couple of these defences, although they have been defending in areas that they won previously. I'm not sure about Long Eaton North, if that was Tory before or not. And also, there are a few local parties that do quite well in Derbyshire too, and there is a localist standing in this by-election as well. So there's a few things there. I feel like I would back Reform to win, although it had, like I say, has been a mixed bag for Reform in Derby. Not in Derbyshire, in just defending their seats they won earlier this year. So look, they'll be hoping to defend, of course. It does their rep no good when they lose seats that they won just a few months ago. So that'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. Next off, then we're going to Nottinghamshire, just across to the east of Derbyshire, and going to Stapleford South East Ward for Broxtowe Council. Labour defending here, and you can see they're defending a pretty slender lead by the look of it. Again, a very split vote pattern here. 2023 this was last elected as well, so not even recently. 29% Labour won, so a low share of the vote to win on. The Liberal Democrats look like they were in second on 23.9, Tories on 21.3, Independent on 14. So very split there. I expect to see the Labour vote fall away pretty dramatically. I don't think there's any chance that Labour will defend this when they only won with 29% previously. Nottinghamshire, of course, Reform did very well there in May, and they are standing here. But yeah, with the voting split like that, it's very difficult to call, really. I do expect Reform to perform quite well over there. May well be Reform versus Liberal Democrats shootout again. Next up, then, down to the southwest to East Devon, Exmouth Holston Ward. Liberal Democrats defending, which would lead me to say Liberal Democrats will probably win. They are pretty good at defending their seats, and there's a number of them that they're defending next week, actually. So the Lib Dems, they got about 40% of the vote last time. Labour got 30, and the Tories got about 30 as well. So fairly close, a 10-point margin. But like I say, I think the Lib Dems will defend that. Reform, of course, are standing. Labour are not standing. So it'll be interesting to see how much of that, if all that Labour vote goes to the Greens, who are standing. See if the Greens get around 30% of the vote here. And Reform, again, look, Devon, I think more of a Lib Dem territory, but Reform did well in Exmouth in the county council elections earlier this year. So again, wouldn't write them off, but I do expect the Liberal Democrats will probably defend successfully. I wouldn't be surprised at all, though, if Reform overtake, I should say, the Conservatives, and they get relegated. To be fair, if the Greens are able to take that 30% of the vote that Labour got last time, it could well be Greens second or Reform second and Greens third, and Tories could be relegated all the way down to 4th place. We'll have to keep an eye on that one. Nunthorpe ward in Middlesbrough then. So this is a Liberal Democrat defence as well. They got 36.3% of the vote last time against the Tories 35%. So a very slender margin of victory for the Liberal Democrats there. And again, I'm going to say, I mean, this frankly applies across the country, but Middlesbrough, the northeast, very much a strong area of the country for reform, who again are standing here. And with a such a slender margin of victory previously for the Liberal Democrats, perhaps there is more of a chance here for reform to get a gain off of the Liberal Democrats if they can win enough of that Conservative vote and maybe a bit of that Labour vote at the end here. They only got 10% of the vote last time anyway, but if they can entice some of that Labour vote over to them and get enough of that Tory vote over to them, they might have enough to pip the Liberal Democrats. But of course, that would require the Liberal Democrats to not increase their own vote share, which, in all fairness, they do manage to do in most of these by-elections. Independent last time also got 18% of the vote, or 19% of the vote, and there's no independent standing this time, so that vote is also up for grabs. So that'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on as well. Will Reform be able to capitalise on their northeast sort of momentum and beat the Liberal Democrats, which is something they don't necessarily do all that often. Over to Devon again then. Next, we're going to Torridge, Winkley ward. Conservatives defending. They got 48.6% of the vote last time, so very pretty good result for them. Liberal Democrats on 33.6% of the vote. Look, again, and it's a three-way shootout this time between the Liberal Democrats, the Tories, and Reform. It's difficult to say the Conservatives will successfully defend anywhere at the moment. As we've seen, we saw last week they had really big vote share declines, if you remember, last week. This week, obviously, only the 3, but they still declined by about 20 points across the board. So difficult to back the Conservatives to defend. Like I say, Devon just gives me much more Liberal Democrat vibes than Reform at the moment. So I would back the Liberal Democrats to get a gain off of the Conservatives here. And again, it could well be the Conservatives relegated to 3rd out of 3 here in Torridge. So we'll have to wait and see. Lastly, then next week is Tudor Ward, Watford, Liberal Democrats defending again. 47.4% of the vote they won last time, ahead of Labour on 23.4%. So a decent margin of victory for the Liberal Democrats. And look, the Liberal Democrats are actually very strong in Watford. It's a convincingly Liberal Democrat council, which I can show you. So there you can see Liberal Democrats with a big old majority on Watford Council, 30 councillors to Labour's 6. So I expect that the Liberal Democrats will successfully defend in Watford as well. So look, double the amount of by-elections next week as we got this week. And some of them going to be quite interesting as well. So if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel and make sure the notification bell is pressed so you don't miss next week's roundup. This week, we will try and get the 2026 regional video out. Apologies again for not getting that done this week. So make sure you don't miss that. I think we're going to go and have a look at the West Midlands this week because I think this is an interesting area. Obviously, as you can see there, a lot more areas for Labour to make pretty big losses. Birmingham, not least among those. But also one of the few areas of the country this next year outside of London where I think there's more pain yet in store for the Conservatives. Solihull there you can see, and up here Newcastle under Lyme as well, amongst others. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss that. Thank you everybody for watching. Please do leave a like on this video. It does help the channel greatly. And of course, as always, please do get involved in the comments with your thoughts and opinions. Thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.